Vincent Davis is dead because Corey Brown wanted him dead. Corey Brown and Josnell Rodriguez swore allegiance to a gang called Sex, Money, and Murder. That gang thrived on violence to control the drug trade in the Soundview and Castle Hill neighborhoods in the Bronx. These men each took an oath to put sex, money, and murder ahead of everything else. They took an oath to kill without caring, and that is exactly what they did. The evidence at this trial will show that Corey Brown ordered the murder of Vincent Davis. Davis was Brown's rival in Sex, Money, and Murder. Davis was a threat to Brown's power, and because of that, Davis was shot repeatedly while walking out of a cookout on a summer night in 2012. Davis was 32 years old. Now, Brown wasn't there that night, but he had been grooming the trigger man for months, and that night, he green-lighted the murder before it happened. Josnell Rodriguez was there that night. He was the lookout. He called the shooter to confirm where Davis was, and after the shots were fired, he hid the gun. That is why we're here. We're here because Corey Brown and Josnell Rodriguez put sex, money, and murder, the girls, the drugs, and the violence ahead of everything else, because Vincent Davis was gunned down in July 2012 and died a few weeks later. We're here because Corey Brown ordered the shooting and rewarded the shooter with status and power after the job was done. Because Josnell Rodriguez, when faced with the decision of helping to carry out the murder or walking away, chose to help. We're also here because even though Davis himself was a member of Sex, Money, Murder, and even though he was a drug dealer, he didn't deserve to die. We're here because Vincent Davis was killed simply because he was a threat to this man's power. Now, over the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you what the evidence in this case is going to show and how the government is going to present the evidence to you. So let's start with what the evidence will show. Corey Brown has been in Sex, Money, and Murder almost since it started as a set of the Bloods in the late 90s. You will learn at this trial that Brown sold crack for Sex, Money, and Murder on the streets of Soundview, and that he, along with a bunch of other members of Sex, Money, and Murder, got caught. Brown went to prison in 2002. While in prison, Brown, who was a leader on the street, gained even more status, more respect, more power within the gang. He was released in 2009, and he went right back to the streets. He had learned his status, and as you will see in this trial, he wanted everyone to know it. He tattooed Sex, Money, and Murder across his back. But when he got back to the streets, Brown faced a new challenge: Vincent Davis. You see, Davis had been arrested at the same time as Brown in 2001, but he was released earlier. Davis had come back to Soundview, and he took over the streets. So while Brown was gone, people in Sex, Money, and Murder who used to be loyal to Brown became loyal to Davis. The conflict came to a head in the summer of 2011 when Davis and Brown were involved in a fight. During the fight, Davis slashed Brown's face with a razor from above his eye all the way down to his mouth, leaving a scar running down his face from top to bottom. You will learn that Brown put out the word that he wanted Davis dead and attempted to recruit young, hungry members of Sex, Money, and Murder to do it for him. And ultimately, that is just what he did. At this trial, you will hear from the shooter, the man Brown recruited, a man named Christopher Lopez. Lopez is in prison and has pled guilty to his participation in the murder of Vincent Davis. He will tell you about how Corey Brown brought him into Sex, Money, and Murder, and how when Lopez himself was released from Rikers Island in late 2011, Brown showed up at Lopez's house, took him out, treated him special. He will tell you how Brown showed him his scar and told him that he wanted Davis killed, that Davis had to be taken care of. You'll hear from Lopez that he only knew who Vincent Davis was because he had seen him around the neighborhood, how they never really even spoken, not until the night that Lopez shot him. At this trial, you will hear all about that night, about how Lopez learned where Davis would be that night, how Lopez called Brown to get the final go-ahead, and then went and got the gun. You will hear how Rodriguez helped, how he told Lopez where to find Davis, and how he suggested that they move the car after he knew that Lopez had the gun. And after Lopez shot Davis, how he helped him hide the murder weapon. You will also hear that the getaway did not go quite as Rodriguez planned, and he shot himself in the hand while cleaning the gun. Lopez drove Rodriguez to the hospital, where Rodriguez lied and said that he, like Vincent Davis, had been shot at a cookout. Along with the murder at this trial, you will also learn about how sex, money, and murder operated as a set of the Bloods, a gang, and how everyone in the gang took an oath passed down from one generation to the next and revered the sex, money, and murder founder, a man who was serving a life sentence for murder. You will learn that Brown was an esteemed member of the old guard and that Rodriguez was a rising young star. You will also learn that Brown and Rodriguez were not close, but they were bonded by the gang, brothers in sex, money, and murder. You will see and hear about the hand signals and tattoos that they used to show their loyalty and flaunt their membership in the gang to make sure everyone knew and everyone they encountered knew that they belonged to an organization that used violence to protect the gang and to maintain its power on the streets, in prison, and within its very ranks. You will hear about the gang's narcotics trafficking, how only sex, money, and murder members could sell on certain corners, and how if you had status in the gang, you had access to additional supplies of cocaine and heroin. You will hear about Lopez and Rodriguez selling crack together in the Castle Hill houses and pooling together their money to buy a gun. You will learn that in recent years, it became more profitable for some of the young members of Sex, Money, and Murder to take drugs upstate to sell. You will hear about gang members arrested upstate while carrying heroin. You will also learn that when Brown came home from prison in 2009, he was deliberately hands-off when it came to narcotics, but how he knew exactly what the other gang members were up to, and that they were selling drugs. They were the ones taking risk, and you will hear how Brown reaped the benefits. He was their leader, so they gave him money and paid for his nights out, throwing him cash whenever he asked. Although he was working odd jobs to make his probation officer think that he had given up the gang, the evidence at this trial will expose that lie for exactly what it is. You will see firsthand the distribution quantity of marijuana that was recovered from Brown's apartment in 2016. That marijuana was packaged for sale and retrieved from a box that had a Tech-9 automatic weapon sitting on top of it. You will also see the AK-47 and the hollow point bullets recovered from Brown's closet. As a result of their crimes, the defendants are facing multiple federal charges. Judge Coate is going to instruct you on the law at the end of this trial, and to be clear, what she says controls. Just let me say this. As a result of their roles in sex, money, and murder, both defendants are charged with agreeing to participate in a racketeering enterprise, a criminal organization. That organization is Sex, Money, Murder. You will hear that the crimes they committed included murder and trafficking in crack cocaine, heroin, and marijuana. Because he ordered the murder, Corey Brown is charged with murder in aid of racketeering, and both Brown and Rodriguez are charged with conspiracy or agreeing to work with at least one other person to commit a murder in aid of racketeering. Finally, Brown is charged with 2 firearms offenses, one because of the gun that was used to kill Vincent Davis, and one for being a felon in possession of the guns found in his apartment in 2016. So how will the government prove that the defendants committed each of these crimes? You will hear and see lots of different evidence in this case. You will see documents. You will see phone records from the night that Vincent Davis was shot showing the calls between Lopez, Brown, and Rodriguez. You will see hospital records from when Rodriguez shot his hand. You will see that he was treated at a hospital right next to his house where he shot himself when he was cleaning the gun. You will also see physical evidence. You will see the guns that were recovered from Brown's home in 2016, the AK-47, the Tech-9, and the bullets. You will see the marijuana packaged in little baggies for sale. You will see the phones and the text messages and photos that were recovered from each of those phones. Along with photos taken directly from the phones, you are also going to see photographs from Instagram and Facebook showing Rodriguez and Brown together with other members of Sex, Money, and Murder flashing gang signs. You will see pictures of Brown and Rodriguez's Sex, Money, and Murder tattoos. You are going to hear recordings that Brown made in Brown's own voice in 2013 about his own involvement in Sex, Money, Murder. You will see rap videos and songs created by members of Sex, Money, and Murder, recordings that will leave you no doubt about the enterprise in this case, showing the Sex, Money, Murder crew together, glorifying the drug trade and violence. You are going to hear from witnesses. You will hear from a former FBI agent who arrested both Brown and Davis in 2001, and from Brown's probation officer who was supervising him at the time of the murder. You will hear how Brown denied any association with anyone in sex, money, and murder during that time. You will also hear from witnesses who, like Brown and Rodriguez, once took the sex, money, and murder oath and pledged allegiance to the gang, but had decided at this point in their lives not to put sex, money, and murder ahead of everything else. You will hear from the shooter himself, Christopher Lopez. He will sit on that witness stand and tell you about the months leading up to Vincent Davis's death, what happened that night, and how he was treated afterwards. Some of the witnesses you are going to hear from are the people who have inside knowledge of the crimes Brown and Rodriguez committed. They will tell you from their own first-hand knowledge about Brown and Rodriguez's drug dealing, about pledging themselves to the gang and to violence and cash, and about the murder of Vincent Davis, how it was discussed, planned, and carried out. Now make no mistake about it, some of these witnesses have committed very serious crimes. Lopez is a killer. You may ask yourself why the government would be calling them as witnesses. The reality is, and your own common sense will tell you, that only criminals, only people who are actually involved in these crimes can tell you about how sex, money, murder, drug trade worked, how the gang functioned and rewarded violence and loyalty, and how the murder of Vincent Davis was planned and executed. You will also learn that Lopez is not testifying out of the goodness of his heart. He did not turn himself in for this crime. He was caught. But you will learn that Lopez pled guilty to his crimes, including the murder of Vincent Davis, and is testifying in the hope that he will receive a lesser sentence, and he will explain that to you himself from that witness stand. It is no secret. All of the witnesses in this trial will tell you why they are here. But when you listen to these witnesses, the question before you is not whether you approve of what they have done. The only question before you, as you evaluate their testimony, is whether they are telling the truth. So when you consider their testimony, please look at it very closely, very carefully, and think about whether what they say makes sense. Hold their testimony up against each of the other witnesses in this case, and see whether what they tell you fits with the other evidence that you see. The phone records, the documents, the videos, the physical evidence, all of the evidence in this trial. After you've heard and seen all of the evidence in this case, you will have no reasonable doubt as to exactly what happened here. You will have no doubt that Vincent Davis is dead because Corey Brown ordered that murder, and because Jasnell Rodriguez helped to get the job done. You will have no doubt that the defendants are guilty as charged. Between now and then, I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. First, pay close attention to the evidence. Second, follow Judge Coates' instructions. And third, use your common sense, the same wisdom and good judgment that you use in your everyday lives, the common sense that guides you in every important decision that you make. If you do those 3 things at the end of this trial, you will reach the only verdict consistent with the evidence, the law, and common sense, that the defendants are guilty.